bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. How you doing? Fade to Black. Yeah. Woo. What a day and so forth. Today's Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. As if you didn't know that. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. And we're going to get to things in just a second. I do want to let everybody know, help support the show and everything that we do around here. Get yourself a Fade to Black t-shirt. There's 2 shirts, 2 ways to get them, 2 different shirts, 2 ways to get them. The links are below. Get a Game Changer membership, you get a shirt. Order a shirt, order both shirts, order 1, order 4. Order 2 for you and 2 for some friends or your significant other. Everything is autographed. Everything includes shipping. The links are below. An amazing week here at Fade to Black. Monday, Masadi was with us. One of the great conversations that I've had on the show, and they're all great. Last night, Susan Slaughter was with us, and talking ghost hunting and witches and spirits and all of that stuff. It was just an amazing show. And tonight, Elizabeth April is back with us. And tonight, I've called this show The Mysteries of the Universe, which allows me to take advantage of her brain. I can get all of it. Everything is on the table tonight. We're going to do that, The Mysteries of the Universe. And then tomorrow night, Patricia Mana is with us. She is a psychic detective. So how does she assist law enforcement? How does law enforcement find her? When do they get to the point of an investigation that they call a psychic detective? And how does she get it done? How does she solve cases? We're going to do all of that tomorrow night with Patricia. And now I've got 4 major events coming up. Next week, I head to Peru and Bolivia with Brian Forrester. And I'm going to be gone for 2.5 weeks. So no Fade to Black, but I will be live streaming from both Peru and Bolivia. Pumapunku. I'm going to live stream from Pumapunku. All right. With all of you. That is November 15th through the 27th. And then when I get back from Peru, I turn around and it's the Conscious Life Expo. I have been hosting the Conscious Life Expo for 10 straight years. I think this is year number 11 for me. It's at the LAX Hilton. It is the largest conference in the world. It's the biggest and the best. It's an honor and a privilege to host that event. And that is February 7th through the 10th, 2025. Again, at the LAX Hilton. Tickets are on sale now. And the links, schedule, and everything, including Elizabeth April, everything is below. All right. And then right after that, it is Rise of the Guardians. This is in Sedona, Arizona, March 29th through the 30th. I'll be hosting. I'm also going to present, and I am going to get a private UFO Skywatch together for a bunch of my close friends. And that means you. That is March 29th and 30th. And then I'm heading to the Midwest for the Contact Modalities Expo. Again, I'll be hosting and presenting there. That is May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, 2025 in Delavan, Wisconsin, on Delavan Lake. It's a beautiful resort. We've got Adam Apollo. We've got Chris Bledsoe. We've got Paola Harris. We've got myself and an amazing list of presenters and speakers. And more to be added. I will keep everybody posted. Tickets are on sale now, and the links are below. All right, I want to let everybody know really quick that right now, as I speak to you, we have got a very large and terrifying fire that is burning out of control, not too far from my house. And houses are burning. It is tearing through neighborhoods, and it's just sad to me. And these are my neighbors. This is our community in Southern California. We go through this all the time. But when houses and neighborhoods like that are burning and people are evacuating, it's just it's so my thoughts and energy and everything else is with everybody that is being affected by that fire. And that's not one. We have actually two burning in Southern California right now. Okay. The fire is and the wind, because it's really windy here. The wind is blowing from the west to the east, or from the east to the west, and burning and pushing everything out towards the ocean. And it isn't coming this direction or towards Los Angeles at the moment. And if there's any good news, it's that. And the winds are supposed to die down by tomorrow. I thought about not doing the show tonight because of this, but everything changed directions. But it started today, and it went to 10,000 acres in just a couple of hours. Very frightening stuff to see. Okay. Plus, I have the airport right by my house, and watching the helicopters and the planes just flying back and forth and back and forth. It just lets you know that we live here in Southern California, and that's what we go through. All right. All right. So that is that. Tonight, Elizabeth April is with us. And like I said, we're going to talk about the mysteries of the universe, but all of the consciousness of the world, I want to discuss that. I want to talk about her journey. I want to talk conspiracy theories with Elizabeth, because I can do all of that. And this is what she does, and how we can start to evolve into a higher consciousness throughout these very stressful times that are going on with this planet. She is a very important voice in our community, and I respect her opinions on just about everything. I have been a fanboy for a very long time. And I'll say this before I bring her on the air. A couple of years ago, because I host the Conscious Life Expo, and I also host the award ceremony that we do every year there, amongst other things. And so I presented her an award for her new book that was just overwhelmingly voted on by our community. There's that part of it. But to see her glow, and the way that the crowd responded to her winning that award, and I was just able to present it to her on stage, it just meant so much to me. And I just stood there and was very proud. And tonight she's back with us on Fade to Black. And I would like to welcome Elizabeth April. Elizabeth, that was a moment. That was a moment when I handed that to you, and to watch that was a packed room, and to watch everybody, that kind of lets you know maybe that you're doing the right thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think that you and I have always been to the same conferences and events, and I think it's about time we do a deep dive. So I was very happy to see your people reach out and set this up. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. But okay, now before we get going, what do you have a focus for this year's Conscious Life Expo?
I'm pretty sure I submitted a topic, but I don't remember what I submitted because it was a long time ago.
Right.
I usually just sort of go with the flow intuitively, but yeah, there's just been a lot of major themes around empowering the individual to get to the next vibrational level, because we are at a place where we've got a battle going on both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. So right now I've really been urged to give the tools needed in order to navigate this very transient time we're in.
Now, to get to where everybody is, it's a hero's journey. Everybody goes on this, and I like to say that the people that attend the conferences that you and I do, they are there for deeply personal reasons. So powerful reasons, so much so that they are drawn to a conference like that to seek answers, seek knowledge, make friends, right? And talk freely and do all of those things. And I love finding out from them. I ask them all the time, why are you here? You know, what brings you here? Strangers. I do it all the time. And I'm going to ask you the same question. How did you get here? You know, what is your life's journey? What was the motivation? Was there one single event, or was it a bunch of things? Or did you just have, you know, a crazy ass uncle or something that exposed you to this?
No, it's been such a journey, and I'll try and summarize it as concisely as possible. And what's beautiful too is that, you know, I sort of get up and I do what I do and I share knowledge. And a lot of people, especially people who have just found me, because I don't do a lot of interviews, they actually don't know my full backstory. So it is nice to relay it every once in a while. So in this lifetime, I was born with extrasensory abilities. I think a lot of people are. I think we're very in tune. I also think that you don't have to be a fifth generational psychic in order to have these abilities. We are souls embodying a physical being, so everyone can tap in. But in particular, I was seeing ghosts and spirits and feeling energies. I would have panic attacks in public places very often because I was feeling everyone's energy. Obviously, my parents thought I was different. They didn't know why. Especially my sort of mediumship or like ghost abilities really freaked my mom out. It very much so intrigued my dad. Now, my dad was Catholic, so we were raised Catholic. So my framework from a very young age was God, you know. And from a very young age, I had many imaginary friends. And one of my main imaginary friends was God. So from the age that I could really talk, maybe around 3, 4 years old, I would tell my dad often that I was talking to God. And at around the age of 6 years old, I came out to my parents and said, that's it, I'm going to be a nun because I know that I'm here to communicate with God and then relay God's messages to the world, which is funny because in a weird sort of way, without that framework, I'm sort of doing similar work now. And but that freaked my mom out. She was not Catholic and did not want me to be a nun and in her mind throw my life away. And it took a while to sort of get outside of that framework. At around the age of 10, I was the weird kid. I was going to my friends' houses, seeing their dead grandpa walking around. And so I didn't have a lot of friends. And at that point, I decided I just want to be a kid. I just want to, be here. And so that's when I started to get really involved in like athletics and sports, and that grounded me. So talk about going from the very metaphysical world to the physical. And all of a sudden I lost my abilities. And that was exactly what I wanted. Now, because I lost my connection with that realm or those realms, I went into a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, even like suicidal ideations. Shouldn't have said that. I know it's YouTube. But, there's aspects there that I was really just questioning. Why am I here? What is the purpose? So when I was a teenager, I went around to every authority figure I could find. We're talking teachers and counselors and therapists. And I even went to a priest and sat them down and said, okay, great. You're the guy. Tell me, what is the purpose of life? Why are we here? What is the reason for all of this? And every single time I was met with just blank stares and disappointing answers. No one could tell me the reason, the purpose, not even a priest. And so I really felt hopeless for a long time. And turns out it was my dad who said to me when I was 16 and really going through it, and he's like, would you be interested in a past life regression? And at that point, I'm like, I'll try anything, right? I'm just looking for answers. And so turns out his Catholic and engineering mix, he also did a course in past life regression when he was going to school for engineering. And so in an hour and a half, we went into about 5 different lifetimes. And once again, lifetimes where I was a healer or a philosopher or a shaman, right? All of these lifetimes where once again, I was able to gain access to information and then relay that information to people. And so finally at 16, I realized, thank goodness I'm not just 16. Time is actually an illusion and no one's talking about it. Reincarnation is real. And what was the third thing? I know my mission. I know my purpose. I'm here to do something like that. So I ended up taking my dad's past life regression notebook. I copied his notes in my own notebook. And 2 years later, when I went off to university at 18, that's how I made friends. I would like go up to kids in my classroom and ask them, hey, do you believe in reincarnation? Like, do you think that you've lived here before? And especially the ones that said, no way. Like, that's not a thing. I would say, all right, well, let me show you something. And I would take them into a regression in my student housing, and I would have them experience simultaneous time, reincarnation, the Akashic records, whatever you want to label it. And so for me at 18, I started to become the observer. I mean, think about just taking 100 people into 5 past lifetimes. That's potentially 500 like births and deaths and lessons that I got to observe. Now, eventually, I got kind of curious, where else can we go? So then I started taking people off planet, and that got really interesting. And then eventually I thought to myself, it's taking 45 to 60 minutes to take someone into a regression state. And then it's another hour and a half to guide them through. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth. And some people aren't even able to be regressed because they're not able to let go of their current reality. So I thought to myself, how can I expedite this process, right? How can I make this faster and more efficient? And that's when I learned how to go into deep states of trance meditation myself. So I learned how to regress myself using past life regression techniques. And in that state, I started to explore my own Akashic records. And then I started to explore just ancient human history, like what went on in ancient Greece, like what really happened in ancient Egypt. I wanted to know those things. And then I started to be able to tap into other people's Akashic records without having to regress them. It was shortly after that I went away to a 10-day silent meditation retreat called Vipassana, which is something that I did in a past life. So I'm like, great, I want to bring this technique back into my current life. And during that 10-day silent meditation retreat in the middle of nowhere, of course, I ended up getting abducted by interdimensionals. So now moving up until that point, I was remote viewing, astral traveling, getting out of my body, a lot of telepathy, connecting to my spirit guides. I was doing mediumship work. I was helping people with past life regression. So really all of these extrasensory abilities.
How old were you?
So I was 18. So basically 18 was my reawakening. 16 was a huge moment for me because of the initial past life regression, but I brought everything back online at 18.
So yeah. So you're like
18,
19,
yep.
20 years old.
Yep.
And your mind must have just gone, right? It just,
oh yeah.
Understanding meditation and how to see. But the other thing, and I did this at the age of 21 too, as well. And I almost couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
When you seriously realize and you look around, the world is not what it seems to be.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a lot to handle for a tender 21-year-old mind, isn't it?
Yeah. There was a point when I was around, I would say 14 to 16, and I created a hypothesis. I wrote this journal entry, and my hypothesis was either A, okay, I'm onto something here, and the rest of the world is completely blind and completely crazy. Or B, I'm completely blind and completely crazy, and the rest of the world is that is the reality. And I remember at that age thinking, if all life is to go to school, go to more school, get into debt, pop out some kids, and then die, like, count me out of it, right? Because that was the worst case scenario. If that's what my life was meant to be, then what am I doing here? And that was sort of the existential crisis that triggered this reawakening. But now, before the abduction, if you were to ask me, all right, Elizabeth, do aliens exist? I would say, yeah. I mean, there's got to be something else out there in the universe. Like, we're not the only intelligent things, but why would they be here? Why would they bother with us? Like, I always perceived us as like a very rudimentary ant-like caveman type civilization. So why would these highly intelligent beings utilize their precious resources to visit us? You know, because we're so insignificant. That was my take on aliens at that point.
It's not a wrong take. It's not a wrong take. It's not a wrong
Right.
take. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So
That's honest.
So then, of course, I get abducted, like physically abducted, taken from this meditation retreat. And it wasn't a nice experience whatsoever. But what that was for me, so it was really the past life regression at 16, and then this abduction at like 18, 19. And that blew, you know, it just opened that can of worms for me to be like, okay, what? So who are they? Why are they here? What are their intentions? Why are they even bothering with us? And what is our connection to them? And so now I'm 32 now. So it's been well over a decade of utilizing, specifically, I would say sort of my main ability would be remote viewing, getting out of my body, utilizing, you know, deep mind probes or telepathy to communicate with these beings, to ask all of these questions, and then also to do some conspiracy digging, which is like remote viewing military bases and seeing what's going on there, which is so fascinating. And I went down that rabbit hole for many years. So yeah, so it has been well over a decade of exploring all of that, opening up all of those doors, and getting to a point now where, you know, it's like, I know that the only thing I know for sure is that I don't know anything at all, right? And that for me is the place that I need to be in order to explore and be curious and be skeptical and ask questions, and then have those questions be answered really by direct downloads of information or experiences. So one of the other things I want to mention, and then that's pretty much my story, is it became very clear to me at a young age that I was not meant to do any external research. So, I mean, the content that, you know, I do consume content, it's mostly true crime and like cheesy, mind-melting reality shows, which is terrible to even admit.
Oh no, you're right on. You're right
But
on
like,
point.
I cannot watch ghost hunting, paranormal. It is like, I can't even watch my own content. It's just nails on a chalkboard for me. But also the other thing is, it's so important for me to have integrity and morality and authenticity to keep my information as you know, sort of limited and free of external influence as possible. So the only validation I ever get is when someone's like, oh, wow, you and this other person are saying the same thing. And I'm like, great, we're all channeling the same information, which is incredible, right? So I just wanted to mention that too, that I do have a very high standard when it comes to integrity. And I'm really grateful that I went through everything that I did first, even though I'm only 32, for such a long time to get to this place where integrity and discernment are so key for what I do.
Do you have a pen?
Do I have a pen?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I want you to write this down.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Since you're the true crime aficionado. Okay.
Okay,
Write this
go for it.
down and
Yeah.
do not write this. Do not mess around. Go straight to this. It's 3 parts and
Okay.
watch it after the show. Okay.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Anatomy of Lies.
Okay.
It is a 3-part docuseries
Cool.
about the writer and co-executive producer of Grey's Anatomy.
Ooh.
And how that's it. That's
Okay.
Just you're when you get to the end of that, you're like, what? Okay,
Cool.
so just go.
Awesome. I will. Yeah.
You're gonna come up to me in February and go, Church.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Okay. So, but I had we're going to stay on this because I want to jump into conspiracy theories. And when I was 20, right, same age, 20, I might have turned 21.
Okay.
I had a French roommate. His name was Olivier, from France, knew it all, pompous, right? One of those guys. But I loved him. And he said to me, we were the same age. And I was going through this existential crisis that we all do around that age. And he says to me, he goes, you know what happens when we die? And I'm like, we're smoking weed or something, right? What? And he goes, this. I said, what's that? He goes, we turn into dirt and we feed the earth and we achieve our place in evolution as fertilizer. And I was like, what? What? And it ruined me, Elizabeth. It ruined me. It just like, what? That's it? That can't be. And it threw me into a serious crisis that I didn't leave my room for a month kind of thing. And so 40 years later, this is last year, we go to this concert. I hadn't seen him in 30 years. And we're at this concert. And I go, dude, do you remember when you said to me, and now, you know what he is now? You know what he is now? He's this sculptor of the esoteric. He's a sculptor. He does this amazing work. He's all into this weird, but that's not what he used to be, right? He evolved out of that. Anyway, I go, you told me there's nothing after life, that we turn into fertilizer. He goes, I did? I go, what? You don't remember that? Dude, you ruined me for 10 years, right? And yeah, and because of what he said to me, Elizabeth, I just looked around and said, is everything a lie? Is spirituality a lie? Is the news a lie? Were my parents lying to me? Are my teachers lying to me? Are books lying to me? Are politicians lying to me? Is it all just a thing of lies? And then I started to jump into the thought of conspiracy theories, and maybe they're not conspiracy theories. Maybe they want us to think that so we can be called crazy. And that was the other part of this, is when you find out a conspiracy theory has a little seed of truth to it, that messes you up even further, because what else out there is a conspiracy theory that isn't so much crazy talk? Yeah. Is that the next stage in your journey?
Yeah, so that is the next stage. And I think that in so many ways, that is the progression of like a spiritual awakening. The first book that I wrote that you actually gave me the award on is called You're Not Dying, You're Just Waking Up. And so the first stage is blissful ignorance, right? Which is like where the majority of the world is in. And then you transition into questioning. The second you get that trigger to question everything, whether that be, a lie that's exposed by the government, or, a comment like that by a friend, it spirals you into, okay, well, am I happy? Who am I? What's really going on in the world? Is that the truth? What is the truth? And that's when you deep dive. And for me, I think specifically my curiosity was around, who is the government, and are we being lied to? And do they have hidden military bases? And I remember specifically one of the military bases I visited, I ended up finding I called them dinosaur people. I didn't have a name for them. And they looked like giant humanoid dinosaurs. And so for many years, I was saying that like dinosaur people are real, and and we should be worried because what are they doing here, you know? And so that was sort of my deep dive. For about 4 or 5 years, I was in the deepest, darkest pit of the government's lying to us. I'm Canadian personally. I was born and raised in Canada, but I was like, F America. Like I was so against, like, I mean, everything, all the conspiracy theories, the government's doing it to ourselves, and there's a shadow government, but that's what I was experiencing behind the scenes. And it got to a point where I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was so sick and tired of being in this deep, dark pit of despair and conspiracy theories and agendas. And I finally got to this place thinking, there's got to be something else, right? Like other than all of this that is truly happening. And it's really sad to think about it because it feels like we're insignificant and we don't have a choice in the matter and we're just getting manipulated and programmed. There's got to be a different side to this. And a lot of what I tuned into, especially in those first couple of years of reawakening, was quantum mechanics and quantum physics, which was really interesting. And one of the things that I learned just through my deep dive and exploration, and as a clairvoyant, I can see the atomic level of physical reality. So I was really like experiencing and seeing wave particle duality, which is so cool, and mind bending. But one of the very natures and fundamental aspects of this universe is it's a binary system, right? Which means that we've got one and the other. We've got light and dark. We've got high and low. So when I started to understand more about quantum mechanics, I started to really question, well, there can't all just be dark. There's got to be good somewhere. And even after my very fear-based abduction experience, I thought to myself, well, I experienced the not so good interdimensionals, but there's got to be good ones too. And it was about a couple of months after my initial abduction where I first initially got introduced to the Galactic Federation of Light. And that was sort of the light side of things. I will say I was terribly disappointed when I met the Galactic Federation and learned of their existence, mostly because I was in university studying political science and global politics at that time. And so I was so done with the hierarchy system on planet Earth, knowing how corrupt it was, to learn that you get into higher dimensions only for there to be a hierarchy system and like a need for light and dark balance. And then all of these galactic wars, like I was pissed off, to be honest. I'm like, really, guys? You haven't figured it out? Like, why can't you just all autonomously live together in peace and harmony? Like, so I'm going to reincarnate off this planet and it's not going to get better? Is that what you're telling me? Like, I was so mad for quite a long time. Now I'm over it. But yes, like, like this universe is binary. We have good, we have bad. I had to come out of that pit of despair and conspiracies and agendas and ask, there's got to be something more. And I think that that's also the progression of people. We question everything. We dive into agendas and conspiracies. That's great because you're questioning everything, but it can get you really freaking sad for a long time if you stay there. And then when you question, there's got to be more than just this, that's when you can really elevate to higher levels of consciousness and perception in general.
Here's the problem with that, though.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with being disappointed in that. All right. Now, this is just two friends talking right now. Okay. Here's the problem with that. You can't understand darkness or badness if you don't experience it.
Yes.
A life of an infinite life of fun and goodness and spirituality would suck. That would get boring. There's a reason. I mean, Elizabeth, you would wake up one day and you would come to me and you'd go, Jimmy, can we just go throw a brick through a window or something? You know what I mean? You know, you're a rebel. You ride, right? And you want that taken away, right? You need that element, and you have to know what not to do, what not to be like, but you can't know that if you don't have it there to experience it. So I think that's the answer. You're right. Physics gives us black and white, positive and negative, right? The scales, balance, there is not one without the other. It can't exist. Hopefully we just have a little more good though, right? Just 51%. But that's my take. A life of eternal perfection would really get. Could you imagine listening to Celine Dion for the rest of your life? And you're Canadian. Oh, and here's the other thing. Here's the other thing. Canada, United States is messed up. There's no question about it. The world is messed up. Canada, it's like the Stepford Wives.
Yes.
It's too perfect. They've got secrets. Canada's got secrets. There's some dark stuff in the closet up there too as well. And,
honestly, like I always thought Canada was way better. And then, 2020 happened, and what I say about Canada is that it's so socialist, it's borderline communist. My Canadian fellows, some agree with me, some don't, but when we go over there, my YouTube is completely different. Why? Because of censorship, right? So it's
really, is that? See, that's
no,
what I'm
it's
saying.
true. Like I literally cannot find certain channels in Canada. Like it's just like poof, I have to search for them or like deep dive, or they just don't come up at all. But it's really scary what's going. It's like, oh well, free healthcare, and oh, we'll give you this, and now we're paying for car registration. Fantastic. But no, you're keep calm and carry on sort of vibe. So yeah, you're totally right.
Right. You know what? The grass is greener, right? Yeah. That's what everybody says. The scariest, I've been through customs in Saudi Arabia. I've been through customs in Jordan, of course, Egypt, all over Central and South America, and so forth. The gnarliest customs agents on this planet are Canadian. That is, woo! Okay, so now back to this. The where we are right now with ET, the conversation, UFOs, UAP, the Department of Defense, videos, books, the media, suddenly this thing is out in front. You had your abduction at the age of 18, 19 years old. You've been aware of this for a very, very long time, but you couldn't talk about it. Right? You can't bring this up. It's certainly the news isn't supporting us. Anybody that did talk about it is crazy, has some psychosis, deep trauma, and they wear a tinfoil hat, and quite frankly, they are nuts. Well, it's a brave new world, isn't it? What do you think is actually going on with this sudden public worldwide awareness on the phenomenon?
Okay, well, if we're just going to get right into it. So
yeah, we are. Let's just go. Let's just go.
All right. So I communicate with the Galactic Federation that as far as an external source of information, other than just straight up remote viewing and channeling, whatever you want to call it. So I'll telepathically communicate with different councils, right? With the Galactic Federation. The main contact that I have is with the Pleiadians. And specifically the council is the Pleiadian Security Council for planet Earth. So for earthly matters. So they will inform me of a war or a natural disaster or sort of how a solar flare is going to impact us, like those sort of things, right? So they're Security Council for Earth. And they're really great. So I asked them about this probably a year ago, is what is with this huge push with governments backing and sort of saying that, hey, this thing is real, or we're declassifying this information, or let's have a hearing on it. And so I asked them about that. And essentially what they're saying is maybe not that council, but the Galactic Federation or different extraterrestrial groups, apparently, according to them, have interacted with our governments here and have told the governments that no matter what, disclosure is going to happen. Okay, the governments cannot stop this. So the governments have been informed that no matter what, there's going to be more sightings, there's going to be more contact, because the trajectory of Earth is we're going to a place of, and they call it a galactic civilization, right? That's sort of our goal, is to get to a place where we're fully out in the open about that. And not just that, but think about globalization, but universal globalization. Now we're trading with different groups for intelligence, and that's all on the front end, not on the back end like it has been. And that's for the good of all humanity, not necessarily just feeding that top 1%. So because the Galactic Federation has informed the governments that no matter what, there's going to be disclosure, the governments are now scrambling to essentially get ahead of this in order to control the narrative. So that's part of like this whole Project Bluebeam. The question in my mind is, is this an intentional slip to say, oops, we've got a whistleblower who's talking about this, but we're going to let them talk about it because we want you to think that it's fake, and I know that they do have the technology to stage, some sort of false alien invasion. And that's something that has been talked about as a fear tactic on the government side from behind the scenes. So there's a lot of different agendas at play here. There's a lot of things going on, but that's essentially the main thing that I have received, is that no matter what, that is the trajectory that we're going in, and the governments are trying to stay ahead of it and control the narrative that way. And that's why they're feeding us these little bits of information without giving us everything. And almost in a way that a lot of people are dismissing these hearings. And to be honest, I'm personally sick and tired of hearing them say, oh, take a look at this video from the 1960s. Do you see that little dot on the screen? Yeah, we're still debating if that's real. It's like, let's scrap that and ask, who's flying the ship and why are they here? Like, why haven't we actually addressed the real questions? And mostly it's because they have been communicating with these beings and they don't want to let anyone know.
And do you think that as a possibility, because I think about this all the time, I spend way too much time on this, that science has gotten really good. We don't know it all, okay? But compared to where we were 50 years ago or 100 years ago or 300 years, think about where we are today with science. We have a frigging telescope out in space looking at the craziest stuff ever in the history of everything. So much so that we are able to now look inside the atmosphere of planets that are light years away. When 25 years ago, we didn't even know there were planets out there, right? So it seems that there's a possibility that science outside of the government is going to find out something really friggin' crazy that is going to be out of the government's control. And I feel that the government knows this. The people in power, they know this. And if they don't get out in front of this now, before ET shows up over New York City, right? That there's a very real possibility that science is going to present this first, and it's not necessarily little green men on the White House lawn. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Once again, the main point of this is they're trying to stay ahead of the narrative. They're trying to control as usual. I think with technology, they have the capacity to suppress, right? And this is what they've done time and time again. Maybe there is a whistleblower. Maybe there is, some photograph taken on Mars that NASA covers up, right? I mean, we've seen this cover up go so deep for so long. I think one of the really big changes that we've seen in the past 10 years, especially, is everyone's got a phone, everyone's got access to the internet, and all it takes is someone inside one of these laboratories or these space centers to capture something that they do suppress and then leak it out that way. But I do think that even with technological advancements, there is still so much control and so much suppression on what does get out to the general public. And of course, they don't want to freak anyone out. I think what cosmic disclosure, like full cosmic disclosure, will really do, or one of the foundational aspects that it's going to impact, is religion. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Right? Like, I know from me coming from a Catholic background, when I got abducted, one of my first real questions was, aliens exist, then who is God?
Well,
Aliens
is Jesus an
right?
alien, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Who is
yeah.
Jesus? Who are these angels coming down from the sky? Were they actually ships? Like, that was my first deep. And now at that point, 18, 19, I was well out of religion. But that was my number one question is, aliens? Okay, then what is religion? And who are all of these people or prophets or saints talked about in the Bible? And so I think that it could really dismantle that. Now, I will mention something that's really fascinating. So this just came up in the past month. Now, there's another council that I talked to within the Galactic Federation. This is an Arcturian council, and I call them the Timeline Council. So essentially, their entire job is to observe the infinite amount of different timelines that could potentially play out for planet Earth. Now, of course, within quantum mechanics, we know that, time is simultaneous. So instead of past, present, future, it's past, present, future, right? Everything's stacked on top of each other. And then we've got different dimensional layers and stuff to the universe. But then within past, present, and future, all happening in this moment, we've got an infinite number of different parallel realities. Some call them parallel universes, or I call them timelines that happen. So for example, one timeline is I have a coffee in this. Another timeline is I have a Red Bull. Another timeline is I have water, and so on and so forth. And they're all technically currently existing simultaneously. So this timeline council will observe all of the most probable timelines for planet Earth in particular. And so the more probable a timeline is, the more clear that timeline will show up. So I just wanted to explain how future predictions happen and how I truly believe a psychic can never clearly identify or predict the future based on the understanding that all timelines exist simultaneously, and all it takes is one different choice from someone of free will to change that timeline, right? So anyway, I had to sort of give that backstory. So
that makes really good sense.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
So about a month ago, I go over to this timeline council, and they call me in, and they said, we want to let you know of a really big change. And I said, okay. And they said it has to do with cosmic disclosure. Now, I've been talking with this council for many years now about how global collective disclosure is going to happen. They've never once mentioned this one possibility. And just a month ago, they said this is now not a definitive, right? But it is now a more probable possibility for the future of humanity. And they said, what did they say? I think 2030 to was it 2028 to 2030? Somewhere around there, okay, in the next 5-ish years. And they said, and this is really wild, but hey, hear me out. They said that full cosmic global disclosure could happen in the form of a prominent figure shape-shifting into a reptilian in front of the world, essentially, right? I mean, this could be a politician, this could be a celebrity, it could be a musician on stage in front of thousands who are all live streaming. It would be something that happens that could not be covered up. Now, they've never I've always secretly wished this as a possibility. They've never presented this as an actual probability. Now, what that would create, right? Obviously, mass panic.
I'm
But
going
it
to
would,
predict it's Taylor Swift. It's Taylor Swift.
they didn't tell me. They didn't tell me.
You know what I mean? It
who
was
or how.
something like, something like, not the Pope, right? We would expect that, right? But
Yeah.
Ariana Grande, right?
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
but what this would do, it wouldn't only just, and this is really incredible, right? It wouldn't only just say, oh my goodness, aliens are real, right? It would immediately in that moment say, these beings, right, presumably off-planet beings, have been disguising themselves as us for a long time. So where else do they exist on the planet? Who else are they? And are they the ones setting up all of the key foundations, religion, economics, education, all around the world? And if so, we would have to then dismantle and reform everything because of that disclosure. Alien disclosure or seeing a bunch of UFOs, even one landing on the White House lawn, cool. But having our own person shape-shifting in front of everyone, that would dismantle everything immediately, make us question everything. And what that would do also is have every single citizen of the world band together to say, we have one common goal because we have one common enemy. Yeah, sure, it's not us against these rich white dudes. It's us against a different species who has been controlling and manipulating us from the beginning. Now that would unify the world immediately. And I'm really happy that that is now on the table as a potential collective global cosmic disclosure possibility.
Is it because of, we're going to stay right here. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it because the world didn't freak out like they were supposed to in 2017, right? Religions didn't collapse when the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, I should say, Wall Street didn't, we didn't have anarchy in the streets. In fact, the world seemed to, which includes the Vatican and includes politicians and astronomers in the world of science. Well, the universe is a big place. Of course, there must be life out there. And that was a pretty strange reaction compared to what we've been told over the years, right? That everything would fall apart. Is it because our consciousness is slowly elevating and our knowledge and our ability to understand this complex subject has evolved and maybe we're okay with this type of contact and change?
Yeah, so a big part of our ascension or energetic sort of movement, right, that we're experiencing, right, this consciousness evolution, I believe a big part of that is due to these solar flares that we're getting hit with. And we're getting hit with massive amounts of electromagnetic frequency right now in this solar maximum. And 2025 is the solar maximum year. So which is exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking. But so our consciousness, our questioning, our perceptions are definitely evolving and expanding. An event like reptilian disclosure or reptilian shapeshifter sort of getting disclosed in that way, that would be like ripping the Band-Aid off, right, for humanity. So right now there's all these little seeds that are being planted. That's great. And so there's sort of this split in the road with both conscious evolution and like cosmic disclosure. Do we just go for it and all have this crazy, huge consciousness shift in a moment, which could potentially come through a massive solar flare event and shift us into, say, a new frequency or dimension? Or do we keep getting hit with little, even though they're pretty big, but little solar flares that sort of evolve us along the way and have a much more graceful transition? Same thing with cosmic disclosure. For me, I'm definitely like a go hard type of person. I'm an all or nothing. I'm a rip the Band-Aid off type of individual. However, I do understand the amount of devastation that could potentially occur with an event, either like the consciousness shift and a huge solar flare event, like the Carrington, or a huge sort of cosmic disclosure that could be so disruptive and deeply disturbing for a lot of people. It could cause a lot of trauma. And I opt personally for more of a gradual transition with both things. But we need to realize that all possibilities are on the table. And no matter what, and no matter who is president, it doesn't matter, because the downfall of the old systems are happening, and the uprising of that new Earth system is also simultaneously happening, no matter what puppet is in charge, right?
Well, yeah, well said, Elizabeth. The Band-Aid does have to get ripped off eventually. It has to. Something, we need the jolt.
Mm-hmm.
So we all realize that we're frigging earthlings, and we're not Canadians and Americans.
Exactly.
Right? We're not Africans and Europeans and Asians. No, we're earthlings.
Yeah.
We are earthling. If we go, and I'm not being cavalier here, I'm being very serious. If you and I went to another planet,
mm-hmm.
we would expect to, and pick name a planet, just make up a name, Planet Chevrolet. Okay, so we go to Planet Chevrolet. We would meet people from Chevrolet. We wouldn't expect to meet people from different regions of that planet as individuals, as cultures, right?
Yep.
And that's what we would expect ET to look at Earth as. They don't want to come here and meet Costa Ricans. Oh, no, you gotta, don't go to Canada.
Right.
Don't go to Germany. You definitely don't want to go to France, right? And so that's we need something to wake us up and tell us who we really are. And yeah, you're right. That Band-Aid's got to come off.
Yeah, and I ask the Galactic Federation quite often, because my community asks me to ask them quite often, why don't you just come down? Why don't you just introduce yourselves? Why don't you just show your face, And the response I get from them is, you can't even agree on being the same, right? You're still fighting over religion and skin color and territory. If you can't love each other as the same, how can you expect us to come down and for a copacetic bond to occur? Right. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's just, this world is getting so fascinating. One of the things I've tried to do for probably the last year or two is Instagram asks what your pronouns are. And I don't really believe in that. So I type in, right, my pronoun is human, and they won't accept it. I don't know why, but
really? I haven't seen that on Instagram. Is that really? It's there?
Oh, that's a thing. Oh, yeah. You don't have to have it. And they do allow you to type your own, but they just don't accept mine. So I'm really trying, though. I'm really trying to say, hey, guys.
I'm clicking on profile right now. Let's see.
Yeah. Go edit.
Holy crapola.
I know. So, I try and remind people all the time, right, is that there's so much to be grateful for, because right now, the people who are watching this program, we're privileged, and we need to realize that in the way that we have access to internet, right? And although I always say this, although you don't want to drink your tap water, you can go over to your tap right now, run the water, take a glass and drink it. 30% of the world doesn't have access to clean drinking water. That includes people in America as well, which is pretty mind-blowing. Not to mention 30% or so don't have access to internet, which is truly infinite knowledge and free education, right? So why don't we come together and say, we're all human, and we all deserve basic access to human rights, like food and water and shelter. And I think because we're in the Western world, we don't think about those aspects as things that we can be grateful for. But if we can all come together and realize that there are a lot of people who are suffering. And if we can say we're human and we all deserve these basic necessities, then we can come together and and change the system. But if we're constantly battling over red versus blue, then we're never going to come together in unity. Now, one thing I do want to say about polarity is, think about an elastic band, right? You stretch and stretch and stretch that elastic band, and you become so polarized, so different, so perceivably different than your neighbor. Eventually, that elastic band, especially at its breaking point, it's got to snap. It's got to come back together. So I've said this for many years now, but it is going to get worse before it gets better. I said it long before 2020, that 2020 was going to change the world forever. And I've said it for many years that 2024 was going to change the world forever. This is a huge, massive shift that we're in right now. 2024 to 2028 is a massive shift. And this is the time where, unfortunately, the polarity is going to grow. And I'm sort of predicting within these timelines that 2028 and beyond is when the elastic band is going to snap, and we're all going to say, wow, I can't believe I hated you so much, because we're the same, right? And that's when we can actually start moving together within unity and start to actually reform and change the systems on planet Earth.
Yeah, you got to go to the edge of the cliff.
You do.
You have to. You've got to go to the edge of the cliff. You got to take a peek.
Yeah.
You've got to know, and you've got to have those experiences. That's the only way you grow.
Yeah.
I mean, my life, I can't speak for you, but I'm going to say in a general sense that most people will agree with me. Life sucks. It's got its great points, but you get tested all the time. But I wouldn't change any of that. I wouldn't change anything. You know, that all of that BS and all those hard times, good times too, great times, man. My daughter was born. That was a pretty crazy day. It was amazing. But all of that brought you and I together here.
Yeah.
Right? So if I change any of that,
Yep.
you and I aren't doing our thing. You change one thing in the past, you don't write that book.
Mm-hmm.
Your child's not born.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So that's part of all of this. Yeah, sometimes it sucks. It's just part of the journey. That's all
So
it is.
I want to mention something just on what we were talking about, and then sort of connecting it to this point here, right? This need for the darkness, this need for the suffering, this need for the challenge. So one of the biggest questions in Catholicism when I was younger, and still to this very day, is God, right? Universe, whatever you want to call it, right? But especially in religions, it's, why does God create suffering? Why does God create cancer? Why does God create wars? If God is this presence, why does God do this? Now, when I got out of religion and I started to remote view, and I was able to really transcend space and time, which is so much fun, and I believe everyone can do that, which is also so much fun to teach. One of the first places I went, other than these underground military bases, was I went to God. Like, I went to Source, and really Source was just the center of the universe. So I traveled over there and I spoke directly to Source, and I said, this was my main question. I was so curious. I said, all right, Source, you're all of it. You're everything. You're embedded in all living things, all life, all materials, you've created all of this. So why did you create suffering? Why would you create, beings who aren't even aware of themselves? Like, why do that? And this isn't going to surprise you, because you've already mentioned the answer. So Source responds to me. I documented the response, but this is sort of in effect what Source mentioned. So Source said, imagine for a moment having access to everything, all knowledge, all wisdom, in my world, right? All money, all control, all power, all of the toys, all of the motorcycles, all of the things that you could ever possibly imagine. Now, I was like 18, 19. So at the moment, I'm like, yes, okay, bring it on. Like,
bring it.
Right? I want it all. Like, you're just so young. And so in that moment, I was like, yeah, I would love that. Then Source said, now imagine having that indefinitely. You always have everything all the time. And in that moment, I realized there's no movement. There's no growth. There's no, you are just existing in all of it infinitely. And
There's nowhere to go. You can't
nowhere
go
to go.
You can't go to
sum it up,
11.
right?
You can't go to
void.
11. You
No.
can go to right.
No,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
10, 11, and all of the other numbers you already have them. They're already,
You're already there.
Right?
Yes.
So in that moment, I realized, and then Source was mentioning that this is why I decided to divide myself, right? Basically, all these little soul fractals, source fractals, right? Everywhere, all over the universe, so that it can individually experience moments of incarnation, moments of experience, gain access to knowledge through lack, to come back to a place of all of it, right? And that made sense to me. We have to go through suffering and challenge in order to experience love and light. I mean, that is just what it is. Two more things I want to mention really quick. One, we've talked a lot about the polarity, right? Light and dark. So what we haven't talked about is there is a third aspect to this universe, and there is a third aspect. And that third aspect is actually what Source is, which is 0-point frequency. It is not light or dark. It is both of those things together simultaneously, which is everything and nothing simultaneously. It's like two sides of the coin. Yeah.
That's a quantum computer. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second, right? A qubit is a 1 and a 0 and both.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I want to get to the third thing, and then we're going to take a break. I don't know if you saw this, but about 6 months ago, entanglement was photographed for the first time and imaged, right?
Yeah, I think I heard that.
It's yin and yang. It's the yin and yang symbol. I mean, not approximately, not you have to squint your eyes and kind of look at it kind of thing. It's friggin' yin and yang with the two circles and the two little, I don't know, spermies or what, that teardrop, that, and you look at that and you're like, well, how did the ancients know that?
Yeah.
Or is this universal?
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
That's a crazy thing because it's black and white and the whole. That's what you're mentioning right there. Okay. So what's the third thing?
So the third thing is my next question for Source, right? Was, so what is the process of existing in this universe, which is so fast? I'm going to sum it up. It sounds like a really loaded question, and it is, but I'm just going to sum it up so quickly. Essentially, there are dimensional layers, right? Vibrational layers, like a radio station, right? In this universe. And from what I understand, there's about 12, okay, of these dimensional layers. And so Source was mentioning that you essentially start from layer 1. You learn all of the lessons, have all of the experience, incarnate many times into layer 1 or dimension 1. And then you move to 2 and 3 and so forth, all the way up to 12. I always thought it was a linear process, but it's not. It's more of a simultaneous one. So take the linear out of it. And then, right? And then I had to ask Source, okay, great. So essentially, you're on this mission as these little tiny fractals of you, of this source, of this whole thing. And you learn all these things from every different layer and angle of experience and limitation, essentially. And then as you get up into the dimensional layers, you're less limited. You're closer to, you've got more of Source, right? So then I said, what happens at the end, right? What is the finish line? What happens once you've gone through all of the dimensional layers? You've learned absolutely everything this universe has to offer. Then what? And Source mentioned you have a choice. The choice is one of two. One, you can either rejoin Source as just a part of the whole, or you have the choice to break away with all of your knowledge and wisdom, with the entirety of Source itself as you are, to create your own, consciously create your own universe. and start all over again. So anyway, that's kind of the point of incarnating in general.
I love that, and I think that science is moving in that direction.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
and as soon as I feel like I've lost my mind in this world of woo, I go to science, and then I find out I need science to keep my feet on the ground. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And then I find out, you know what? They are more woo than you and I on our wooest day of woo. It's really funny. Now, so check this out, and then we'll take a break. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are you ready? Okay.
Yep.
Just check this out. That is the image that was just released on entanglement.
No way. I mean, you don't even have to squint for that.
No, I'm telling you, is that nuts?
Wow.
That is an entangled pair of particles.
Wow.
That's nuts, isn't it?
Wow. My mind is really blown.
You know, and that image is from phys.org, the world's premier science website. But
Incredible.
Check, is that crazy?
Incredible. Wow.
Yeah. I look at that, and like I said, it's like how we look at the Dogon or these ancient civilizations and their knowledge of science and physics and engineering, and it's like they couldn't have known all of that.
Yeah.
And then you see this, and you're like, wait a minute, man.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, I love it. All right. Our guest tonight, Elizabeth April. I am your host, Jimmy Church. We will be back after this short break. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, our guest is Elizabeth April. We're discussing the mysteries of everything, of the universe tonight. And Elizabeth, you got to watch me. I'm running around the studio. I go and get a fresh cup of coffee. I'm doing my thing. I sit down and go, boom, right straight to it. It's like I'm almost out of breath, but that's called entertainment, I guess. And you got to see that. So how do we the most spiritual person in the world? Do you know who that is? It's Neil deGrasse Tyson when the plane is going down. That's the most spiritual person in the world. Those that are in denial, that are not pondering something else or thinking about something else that is just so beautiful and everything. But they have this atheist closed-mindedness chemistry version of everything, right? But no, I'm telling you, planes going down, they're like, oh, I had it all wrong. You know, but the other side of it is, I feel that science is really starting to support the belief system that we've been talking about for so very, very long. It is pushing towards this. And when we look at something like the question of dark energy, right? Well, wait a minute here. You're talking about something you can't see, you can't touch, you can't feel, but it is binding the universe. Sounds to me like you're trying to talk about consciousness, but you're scared. And that's where I'm at with all of this. I think that science is going to stumble upon some pretty amazing things that they were afraid to talk about in the past, but they're going to be forced into the subject very soon, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, luckily, we're headed in that direction. And especially when I started to channel quantum mechanics and sat down with multiple physicists to talk to them about my theories and my ideas, every single time they would look at me and say, you've never taken a class, you've never opened a textbook. And I say, no, like I channel this information. Like I experience this particle universe, and then I relay my experience, you know? And I think that it is going to take, science is great, but science is only ever built on what we've already traditionally thought has been proven, which is the problem, right? I think it is going to take someone who really thinks outside of the box to be like, hey, is this possible? And then for science to be like, no, it's not possible. And what's great about quantum mechanics is it throws traditional science out the window and says anything and everything is possible and simultaneously occurring. And so it's really forcing us to question our traditional realms of physics. And it does get into a really weird world. And I've always said that quantum mechanics proves everything that I've ever channeled. It's in science. We're just not quite there yet. And I have a couple of really mind-bending theories that maybe we won't get into because they are pretty loaded. But yeah.
No,
I'm
load me up.
excited.
Load me up. I've got a pickup truck. Let's go. No, load me up. Well, let me comment on that briefly, if I may. When quantum mechanics and theoretical physics is presenting to the world these ideas that they want us to understand, the multiverse, right? Entanglement, 11 dimensions, string theory, non-locality. These ideas are way more out than the wooest of our community.
Yes.
No, and I'm being very, very, very serious here.
Yeah.
They want us to understand that this is where the algorithms and the math and the science is taking them. Well, this community has been screaming about this for a very long time. And I'm totally with you on that. I'm totally with you. Okay, load up my truck. How loaded is it?
All right, I'll plant a seed for everyone, and I think that the purpose of even mentioning this theory that I have would be how how wild and how trippy life could potentially get if we not only understand quantum mechanics and quantum physics, but we start to tap into it. And as the vibration of the planet shifts, and yeah, that sounds really woo-woo just saying it, but it's changing, it's shifting. We can measure that through the Schumann resonance and the solar flares and how it's affecting our electromagnetism. But as it's shifting, we become a lighter density. And as we become a lighter density, we've got more Mandela effects, more glitches in the matrix, more weird time things. And then this is a possibility. So this is my theory. Okay. This came in a deep download. I want to say it was winter of 2019. And so it's called quantum convergence theory. That's the name that came to me. Okay, quantum convergence theory. It's not out there. I have spoken to a couple of physicists about it. I probably should have got them to sign an NDA before, but besides the point. So essentially, this is a theory where there are multiple timelines, as I mentioned before. And when we do apply quantum mechanics, we understand that those multiple timelines or realities or multiple universes are happening simultaneously. So what I believe is possible, and I wrote this all out in a giant hypothesis, sort of as a scientific experiment, right? Is that it is possible for us. I'll just kind of, get to the end. We can get to a place realistically where in a 20-minute time period, we would be able to sit, close our eyes, which is really important because it means that we're not observing a current state of reality. And within that time period of 20 minutes, you are able to accomplish multiple things simultaneously without having to lift a finger. So for example, maybe your to-do list says, water the plants, answer a couple of emails, and feed the dog. All right. And so I believe within this quantum convergence theory that it is possible that through non-observation, which means not only are we not observing the reality around us, which puts us into a wave state, which means that it is all happening simultaneously, it would also be very important that we are also not being observed either. Right. And then the whole saying of, can a plant observe us? Can an animal observe us? And would that also skew the results? And I do believe that, yes, they are conscious beings and they can skew the results. So it does get pretty crazy. But as long as there is non-observation involved, and then there is an objective observation of the tasks that you want to get done, and you literally go through the motions of, yep, so what would I do? I would get up from my desk. I would go over to, the garden. I would fill up the watering can. I would water the plants. I would go into my email. I would answer a couple of emails. I would go over to the pantry. I would feed my dog. And then that would be the 20 minutes. And then essentially the theory goes that you would be able to, the timer goes off, 20 minutes goes by, you open your eyes, the dog is fed, the plants are watered, and your emails are answered, all simultaneously existing. And that's, and then, the theory or the hypothetical sort of experiment that I wrote up, it included a lot of different variables, right? And one of the interesting variables when we talk about quantum mechanics and timeline switching, right? Because it's pretty cool. And it gets pretty trippy, but it's how many choices are made in between each timeline, right? So for example, if you're like, I want to close my eyes and I want to show up in Hawaii because I've wanted to take a vacation, right? For example, but the choices from you to get to your desk, closing your eyes, to showing up, opening your eyes in Hawaii, there's a lot of choices that need to be made, which means that that timeline is stretched far outside of the timeline that you're currently in. I mean, this is where glitches happen, right? And so as the vibration increases, you make a choice. There was another one of you that made a different choice. And then all of a sudden, because they're so close and you could have either done this or this, you end up just transferring over into that timeline. And the glitch is not that you switched timelines. The glitch is that you remembered the alternate timeline that you were just in. And that's only because there was only one choice separating you from one timeline to the other. Like I said, you would require someone who's very highly advanced in order to make such a big jump, like say showing up in Hawaii, but it is possible. So that's my theory. That's quantum convergence theory, is let's bring multiple timelines together, experience them all simultaneously in a physical particle way, and be able to really just sit around and have your alternate selves really show up for you.
Now I love that. And it reminds me, it's kind of an extension of, physicists have talked about this type of idea for a very, very long time. Schrodinger's cat, right? If you look at the application of that, now that's a great thought experiment, right?
Yeah.
But physics says you can change a particle's state by just looking at it. You can change the state of now. How woo is that? Right? You can look at something, right? and change its state, right?
Yeah.
And so that idea, quantum convergence theory, is that what you call it?
Yep.
That is possible. I would say that is entirely possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
How do we, okay, all right. So again, we're going to stay right here.
Yeah.
How do we cause that change?
Yes. Great question.
Right? Yeah, because all you have to really do, in my eyes, well, we have to do it, of course. But if you suggest it, you only have to give everyone the idea, and then you go and make it happen.
Yes.
Make it so, I should say, right?
So,
but how do we do it?
How do we apply that, right? So obviously doing three things at once and then just sitting down, like that's sort of an expert level of applying quantum mechanics. However, I have a very simple methodology to apply essentially timeline hopping, right, in a very realistic way. And I'm going to explain it the best way I can, because this is how I experience it. And this is also how I manage to get through and manifest everything in my life. And once again, I try and stay away from law of attraction and manifestation because it's so woo-woo and it comes with all these perceptions and layers and attachments. So let's call it quantum mechanics timeline hopping, right? So here's how it happens, right? As we know from the double slit experiment and wave particle duality, as we observe the reality around us, we create it, which also lends us to question who God is. Is God creating this or are we, right? Like that's the biggest question with quantum mechanics and this breakthrough. So the easiest way for me to explain timeline hopping is, of course, you're in your present reality. And what we tend to do as human beings is we focus on our present reality and we tend to hyperfixate on the negative aspects of our reality because it creates an emotional reaction in us. And then we get attached to that. And of course, there's layers of identity and ego and all of that associated. So scrape all of that aside. The easiest way to hop into a new timeline is if you are not attached to the timeline. That's really the kicker. Like that's the fine print right there, right? And so I always use the example.
Wait. What do you mean attached? What do you mean attached?
Okay. So for example, if, and I'll use the example of money, right? So if I were to tell someone, okay, I want you to manifest, I want you to hop into a timeline where you open your wallet and there's $100 bill in your wallet. The problem with that for most people is that they have their own sort of perception around money, specifically even $100 bill. Maybe some people have a perception around a $20 bill. A lot of that perception is coming from childhood traumas or lack or whatever, but it's that concept of $100 bill is built up with all of these layers of entanglement, right? You can't hop into a timeline if it's filled with a bunch of entanglement and attachment and stuff and perception. So I go through a whole like sort of neutralizing our perception. That's a part of the book. But let's, for example, right, something that I like to throw out there is a basketball. Great. Like for me, I don't care about basketball. I don't watch it. I don't own a basketball. I don't shoot hoops. Like that's not my vibe. That's not my thing. I have zero attachment. I have zero entanglement. I have zero perception, good or bad, of a basketball. It's a neutral, objective thing. Okay, fantastic, great. So the way that I describe it is, and eventually you can get to a place where you get to a place of 0 point frequency with all aspects of your life. There's no attachment, there's no entanglement, which is obviously the best place to live, right? No karma created when you're just objectively observing everything and experiencing it in the moment. But that's like sort of the next level of things. Let's just say you take an objective object, something you don't care about. And this is something everyone can do at home, and it's so much fun, okay? Think of an inanimate object that you don't necessarily own or have or whatever. Now, the way that we can hop into a timeline where that inanimate object is actually physically present in your life is, the way I like to call it, is through transparent paper, okay? So imagine you had a stack of transparent, like tracing paper, right? Transparent paper. And on that one piece of paper, you can almost see through it. It's so transparent. You draw the image of a basketball. Okay, great. You've thought about that object. You've thought about a basketball once. Fantastic. It's not really physical. It's not there quite yet. All right. So you draw it again. You layer that transparent paper on top of another transparent paper of a basketball. Okay, great. You've thought about it twice. And you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And what happens is the more we focus on something, especially without attachment, we create a density around it. And eventually there's so much density, there's so much focus into this basketball, it ends up appearing in your life. Okay, that's how we hop into a different timeline in a very sort of applicable way. It is through focus, right? It is through the law of attraction, but people don't really know why they create a vision board and then shit ends up happening on the vision board. It's because you're bringing it into density, and sometimes writing something down, or sometimes printing something, right? Or like drawing something. What you're doing is you're taking it from a non-physical space and you're adding density to it. You're adding third dimension to it. Even just by writing down the word basketball, you're adding a dimensional layer to it. And the more that you focus on that, once again, especially without attachment, the easier it is for you to transition into a timeline where it really truly does just pop into your life. And you're like, oh my God, there's the basketball. And then of course you get to a place where you start to manifest or bring things in or timeline shift into things that you really do want and care about, but you got to do the work to detach from it before bringing it in.
Is that what Einstein called spooky action at a distance? Right? Is that a form of entanglement? Are
okay,
you
yeah,
or,
you could
are you
call
connecting with something right that's
Yep.
out there and you're
So it already
forcing
exists, right? That's the whole quantum part of it. It's like
right.
Schrodinger's cat, right? So you're not observing the cat, and therefore the cat is dead and alive. And of course, the other one, right? The third one is like the cat doesn't even exist. Like it's not even in the box, right? And so the cat's somewhere else completely. And all of those possibilities exist simultaneously. So of course, whatever it is that you want, that basketball, it exists in your life at some capacity. It's already there. You're just bringing it into this current timeline.
Is that how communication with anything off world occurs? Right? Think about that. Is it all connected? Right? That makes a lot of sense. You're tapping into something that, and I like the word, intangible, right? That it seems that it's a very fundamental action that is happening at the quantum level, something very, very small that we can't necessarily see or ever have the ability to see, but that action is occurring. And that would explain communication at a distance or telepathy, channeling, certainly. If you're communicating with something that is in another galaxy, but it's happening at real time, that would indicate exactly what you're talking about is not only possible, but it's reality.
Yes. Well, the other thing too, right, when exploring this is that space and time, they may exist, but they exist in very different capacities in other frequencies, right? Like space and time are not stagnant linear aspects of this reality. And the more that we're prompted and pushed into higher frequencies, the more space and time becomes not as linear. And I always tell people, like, the fact, and you do this all the time, like you override space and time. Like I say that the internet is in the fourth dimension, right? The internet is not in the third dimension. And I remember being in university, stepping into all of my abilities and sitting down to write a political paper. And I would sit at my computer for 8 hours and I would objectively, right, remote view myself sitting at this computer. And I'm thinking to myself, so what is my human doing? How am I interacting with this world? How am I interacting with space and time right now? I'm not. I'm sitting at a computer. If I didn't know what was going on inside the world of the computer, I'm drinking my coffee, I'm getting up to go pee, getting some snacks, coming back, typing away for 8 hours. All I'm doing in this world, in this physical reality, is sitting down, tapping. That's it, right? And so the internet itself, it overrides space and time. Like right now, this interview is going to be out in 5 years from now. It's going to be out beyond us existing and living, right? Not to mention that people live right now in this space are there. Where are they? They're in Germany, they're in Netherlands, they're all over the world in their own time zones, in their own space. The internet itself is breaking through our physical dimension, and no one talks about that enough. And that right there is taking our entire society to a new level that no one's really truly realizing, and the implications of that too, of us experiencing a world that is void of time and space.
How special is that? Right?
Super special.
Yeah, super special. It just a short, less than a lifetime ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the extreme. Let's just say 1995. AOL, America Online, right? America Online, as ancient as that sounds, the ability for everybody to suddenly realize you had a buddy list. You're too young to remember this, so don't even say that you do. But you had this buddy list that popped up, right? It was your friends, and from Lithuania, United Kingdom, Europe, New York, Los Angeles, right? But suddenly you're all on the same frequency. Everybody is able to align around the world at the same time.
Okay.
Today, right. Today we take it for granted.
Totally.
We don't understand how special that really is.
So let me blow your mind. Okay. Let me take this to like a new level, right? Same concept, just in a very different way. So think about AOL. Okay. I do remember AOL, by the way. And it was probably a pretty dangerous place for a kid, but like whatever, I was on it. And, and so no longer did you have to physically write a letter, fold that letter up, put a stamp on it, and send it out, and then wait and wait and wait. You don't know if it arrived or whatever. You got email, right? Like how just so revolutionary. We just don't really appreciate it enough. So now take this concept to a new consciousness level. I'm just going to plant a seed because it's a huge concept, but it is so important, and it's very similar to AOL versus sending a letter in the mail. Okay. So before, in the past, okay, very, very recent past, and it's still ongoing to this day, in order to learn something, we have to physically move through life. And essentially there's the law of the universe, which is cause and effect, right? That's essentially karma. You do something and something happens because you did that thing. And also entanglement and concepts like that. So cause and effect, right? So in the past, we had to go to India to have that experience, and then to come home and sort of integrate that experience and learn the lessons and whatnot. moving forward into these higher frequencies, what we are doing is we are sending and receiving information collectively, and we can do this at a conscious level. So this has actually been proven, this concept. I don't know what it's called, but they proved it quite a while ago when they studied monkeys. And there was like monkeys on different islands all over the world. And they were studying this one group of monkeys, and they learned how to use a tool in order to eat their food or get access to their food faster. This
It's
has
called
never been done.
the 100th monkey principle.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Right. So essentially that happened, right? And then all of it, it's never happened before. And all of a sudden, all over the world, all these monkeys are picking up the same tool, doing the same thing without obviously any letters being sent, AOL messages, emails. There was zero communication. And so what's going on here, right? And I believe that this proves collective consciousness, right? That we're all connected in this grid. And so when we take this concept to the next level of where we're evolving into is, I truly believe that we can get to a place within our conscious awareness, especially objective or 0 point conscious awareness, objective observation is what I like to call it, where if you're having money issues, for example, there is someone in the world who has learned the money hack, who has learned abundance, who has gone through the suffering, gone through the challenge that is needed in order to be at a place where they can be financially free. Maybe they have other issues. That's fine. There are other lessons that they're learning, but they've learned this one. And this is why they're so abundant financially, specifically. Okay. What I believe we can do is we can tap into the collective consciousness and we can download that lesson from that person, and we can gain access to it here in the present moment. No longer do we have to live lifetime after lifetime learning things individually. We are now getting to a place where we can, and especially if you're conscious about it, we can send and receive downloads of information, lessons, realization, obviously ancient knowledge and wisdom, just like the yin yang, and we can receive that into ourselves presently, right? So one of the questions is, why do we forget all of our past lifetimes? Once again, because we have to start from nothing and build ourselves up. Now we're getting to a place where I think people are going to start to be born, and there are many children born with their past life memories. It's very similar to that, but instead of even going back, we can just be present and gain access to everything we need to gain access to and clear our karma rather than having to move through cause and effect. We can clear it immediately internally.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a situation in the United Kingdom back in the 50s, and now I don't remember this. They used to deliver milk, right? We had milkmen, right?
Yeah.
And so they would deliver these glass bottles of milk, and they had this foil top on the top, right? And so they would come by in the morning, deliver your fresh milk. Okay. These finches, birds, figured out in this little town how to land on the milk bottle.
Wow.
And peel the foil back and get to the milk. Okay.
Yeah.
This caused the invention of the milk box. You put a milk box on, right? You open it up, you put the milk in, you close the lid. Finches couldn't get through that. But this is what happened. Instantly, finches in other towns were doing the same thing. There wasn't a chance for evolution. Darwin didn't come into play here, right? Right? There wasn't millions of years of DNA transference and alteration. This happened over a summer. And so it goes right back to, how is that? You can't teach, Mother Finch can't teach baby Finch how to do
Mhm.
it, and then turn around and their friends and their friends and their friends. So it goes into the next county and
Yep.
to the next town. You have to step back and go, what's really going on here?
Mhm.
Is there something collective? Is there right, some conscious internet out there that
Yes.
everybody is tapping into? And I would say, is there evidence of that? There's the 100th monkey principle, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And this finch phenomenon that was jumping from town to town. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it was panic city in England at the time. These finches, man. Right? We've got to
So
figure this.
I want to mention something, right? Like if someone's like, okay, well, how do I do that? How do I gain access to everyone else's learned lessons? Like how do I become all of what humans can and are and have been, right? Like how do I accumulate all of that? And I have one, I mean, it's a process, right? But I have one suggestion, and it's a tricky one. And it takes not just one lifetime, it takes many lifetimes to get there. But I think we're expediting the process in at this time. As long as we do not have an attachment or an association to an identity, it doesn't mean that you lose all aspects of self. But if you can step outside of yourself, you can gain access to everything. If you are attached to aspects or versions of yourself, you will never be able to connect with or receive aspects of the collective, right? And I just want to briefly mention there are three.
No, say that,
Yeah.
say that again. I want that
Yeah.
to soak in.
Yes. So once again, we must let go of all aspects of identity, of self, in order to gain access to basically collective consciousness, whatever it is that you want to gain access to. Because, for example, if you have blocks around money issues because your parents had blocks around money issues, well, that's an Elizabeth thing. That's not a collective thing. That's not the truth for the collective. There are many people who are financially abundant. So if we step outside of that, outside of our own box or ideologies or limitations and perceptions, and we're like, okay, all I know is nothing at all, then you gain access to all of it. And just to further the point, I have 3 layers for people to ponder, right? And I always call it the player, the character, and the programmer. So layer 1, level 1 is the the character. Is character, player, programmer. So the character, if you play video games or you enjoy watching movies, you'll get it, like the main character, right, of the movie or of the video game. And you are the character. You are the knight, or you're the mom, or you're the lawyer, or you're the garbage truck driver, or whatever those labels and layers and identities are, right? That's who you are. You are that person. You are the character. And what you do as the character is what you are meant to do, what you're programmed to do. This is, I wake up and I do this in the 9 to 5 every day. And that's who I am. I am the character. Okay. Once you start to question, who am I, and am I happy, and who could I be, you immediately step out of the role of the character and you step into the role of the player. Now you are the individual playing the character. Now you're not the guy in the TV. You're the guy sitting on the couch with the remote control in your hand playing the character. And you can all of a sudden see from a distance who you're playing. Oh yeah, I'm showing up as mom today. Oh, I'm showing up as the badass biker today. Oh, I'm showing up as the, you know what I mean? Like the straightforward in a suit guy or whatever, right? Whatever those layers are. And that's great. If we can be objectively aware of the identities and the roles that we're playing, but not actually attached to any one of them as ourselves, fantastic. You are the player. Congratulations, right? You're playing the character. However, you, as the player playing the character, there are still rules, there's still conditions, there's still levels that you've got to get through in life, right, in order to win the game. So all of a sudden you start questioning your role as the player. Okay, well, this is great. I'm the character. I'm many different characters and I get to play them all, but is there someone else I could be? And when you step back even further, you step into the role of the programmer. You start to realize that, oh, I created the couch I'm sitting on. I created the the body that I'm in. I created the TV that the character is contained within. I created the level. I created the reality. I created all of the particles that are existing right now. I created all of it, right? As you step into the programmer, you step into a part of the creator, a part of source. You are not the source, but you realize yourself as a part of source, which once again comes down to quantum mechanics, right? We are the ones observing this reality. Therefore, we are the ones creating this reality. It's not a higher, it's not God, it's not your spirit guides. It's you. You're doing that. So all of the terrible things in your life, guess what? Congratulations, you did that. All of the beautiful, amazing things in your life, guess what? Congratulations, you did that. And when I stepped into the role of the programmer, and I'm definitely not that all the time, I started taking full responsibility over every aspect of my life. So I asked myself, what isn't working? What didn't I like to create? What don't I like being in? Fantastic. Pinpoint, pinpoint, pinpoint. Now that I understand that I created all of that challenge and suffering for a reason, of course, right? You can't avoid it all. Now I can uncreate those things and recreate them to better serve me, right? And I'm at a point now where I do go through struggle. I do go through challenge. 2024 has been its own sort of beast. But while I'm in it, I am so grateful for it. I'm like, wow, look at this terrible day. Like, how incredible is this? Because I know tomorrow is going to be different, right? And I know that this isn't going to last forever. And how much am I learning right now by being at the bottom of the barrel, right? There's only one way to go. It's up, and it's fantastic, right? So I am the player observing the character going through suffering and enjoying the ride because I get to experience the polarity of this universe. And that right there is incredible. And that's what I try and teach, right? That we are all the programmers of our reality. We're not just the character. We're not just the player. We are the programmer. And everything that I can do, everyone else can do. I just feel like I'm one step ahead. It doesn't take a special person. We are all capable of this. And it's important that we realize that today so we can shift our lives.
It's a huge step. And too many... that sounds okay. Two comments. It sounds too simple. That's because it is, right? Yeah. It's actually, it can be that basic, but too many people find it easier to play the victim.
Yep.
Right? They want to point fingers and blame others instead of backing up and becoming the programmer. And I love that. So how do others, because I don't play the victim. I learned that a long time ago. People, you play the victim and you get ignored, right? Nobody wants to help somebody that's playing the victim card all the time, right? Bees are attracted to honey, and it's really the truth. So how do you get someone to shift from the victim role to the character, right? It's the character first, and then go through the steps. How do you do that? So you got to get somebody to admit it. That's even harder.
So I have an answer, and it's one simple answer. And another way to pose this question, right? How do you shift perspectives, or how do you shift into the character, the player, the programmer? And another way to pose it is, how do we shift from a lower frequency to a higher frequency, or the third dimension to the fifth dimension? And there's one very simple answer, and it's change. As long as you want change, as long as you are willing to change, you're open to shift. You're open to step out. But the problem is that change requires stepping into the unknown. What is the biggest fear that humanity has? It's the fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah, staying in your comfort zone, taking the easy road.
So that's why people have to get to a place of pure desperation. And I get it. I've been there, of like, all right, my hands are up. I'm in full surrender. I can't take this anymore. I don't know what's next. I'm not hanging on to what I have anymore because it's clearly just not serving me. I'll take anything. when you're at a place of pure desperation and you're yelling at the universe or God or whoever you're yelling at, and you're like, I'm ready for change. I'm ready to switch it up. That's when change happens. I believe, obviously, we don't have to get to a place of desperation to be willing to change, but the willingness to change is the only ingredient we need in order to shift our perspective. That's it. And that's asking a lot, because once again, you have to confront the fear of the unknown. You have to confront that, hey, the grass may be greener or not greener on the other side, and that's okay.
20 years ago, I'm not going to go into the full story because it's 20 years long, but 20 years ago, I found myself in a very, 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 very bad place. I did. Financially, physically, in the world, in the culture, in the community, right? It was just, and I went, this is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there isn't, Willy Wonka is not going to come along with some golden ticket. It's not going to happen. It happens here. And what do I need to do? Like you said, right? Hands are up. All right. I tap out. I'm ready. And you have to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there. There. I am an shining example of that. And as soon as I realized that it wasn't the world, it was me, that's when everything started to change. I'm being very serious, Elizabeth. You understand this more than anybody, right? Mm-hmm. But you get to that point, and suddenly, you change yourself, and you change what's going on around. You do this. Yeah. There isn't anybody out there that is going to come along and be somebody's knight in shining armor. The world doesn't work that way, right? And that's it. You're absolutely right. Now we've got thank you, and I can't wait. I get to hang out with you in February. We've got your link tree up, and so there's that. But where's the best place for everybody, not only to reach out, but to see what you're doing?
Yeah, definitely my website, just super simple, ElizabethApril.com. And I've got courses, workshops, a membership with so much content and information if you want to binge watch. I do highly recommend starting with my book, though. If you're just discovering me, sure, watch all my videos, that's fine. But you're only going to get little pieces of the whole. If you want the whole, you got to go to my book, and it's called You're Not Dying, You're Just Waking Up. It really is such an incredible overview of everything you're going to experience along your awakening journey. And then we get into quantum physics and the explanation of the universe and your soul mission and different traits of hybrid extraterrestrials at the end. Like, it really does cover everything. So I highly recommend that as a place of sort of the whole story. And right now I actually just signed an incredible deal with the publisher for my second book. And so that should be released in probably sort of around this time of 2025. And it's all about anxiety, but it's more so about the superpower behind anxiety, the spiritual, and I'm currently writing the last chapter, and it's called Quantum Anxiety, and it gets pretty wild. So if you enjoyed this conversation, you definitely got to put it in your calendar for the next book, because I think anxiety is a growing concern, and I do feel like I have some answers around it, especially myself being a chronic anxiety sufferer. So I'm really excited for this next book to help a lot of people.
Growth comes out of anxiety.
Yeah.
If I'm not feeling anxious or have anxiety and feel too normal, then something's wrong. Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that
Elizabeth, you glow. Safe travels to Los Angeles. I'll see you very soon. We'll break bread together and we'll hang out, and it's going to be amazing. Everybody, Elizabeth April, thank you so much. Her links are below on social media, on our website. Go and check her out. Elizabeth, I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you. Elizabeth April. Perfect night. Hey, you know what? In my world, I am blessed. It's an honor and a privilege to not only do what we did tonight, but to have every night be so perfect on the show. Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll see you soon here in Los Angeles. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, Patricia Mona is going to be with us. She's a psychic detective. We're going to do that and so much more tomorrow night. But for now, all I've got is Go Back, Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Tappy.